of the leads is still coming in through organic activities. And when we talk about our inbound activities, we're talking content marketing. So one of the key initiatives we are taking there, for instance, is we have thought leadership research that we do twice a year typically, whereby we measure the stress in meetings or map out certain patterns and trends, and that of course then is fueled through PR activities. That one is also fueled through speaking engagement I typically take, or through webinars. So that is a key element. Next to that, of course, we do have all the typical content marketing activities. We have a lot of videos, going from simple videos explaining what the product does or how you should do certain things with the product, all the way up to what we call hero content. So the Hub Hygiene hero content model is one we typically use to also drive people to the website. So that is in terms of inbound what we do. And if I just going to try to open another window here. It's still loading. I see. Oh no, here it is.
Leave it 1 minute. I think yeah, that's true. That's the problem with Zoom. You have to stop the share and then open it up again. That's the whole aspect. Yeah, sure.
No, I realized I'm going to share my full screen now. Oh no, I cannot do that.
Wait, you should be able to do it, huh? Unless it's a firewall. It's a firewall from you as well. And by the way, Levin and Vishak, I'm just recording this meeting for us for later on, only for us. Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah.
And so what we have then in our dashboard is we have all the different campaign activities. Can you see it, or should I increase the screen size?
That's perfect. We can see it.
Yeah. And so, for instance, you see here for the source of the lead, we have, for instance, our organic search. Web to lead is actually also just from the website. Then you have a trade show. Then we're going, of course, here to outbound with AdWords. We have different campaigns and so on. So that is how we typically do it. So I would say if it is inbound, it is content marketing activities. It's very hard to indicate which route people followed. We are implementing a lead scoring mechanism there, but that is work in progress. If it is about outbound activities, the bulk is digital activities, so Google AdWords, display advertising, those kind of activities, campaigns on LinkedIn, campaigns on IT communities, for instance, like Spiceworks. For each of them, we do know the source of the lead, so we know what the individual campaign is contributing.
For outbound, Levin, is also the sales. Do your inside sales also proactively call customers, which is completely aside from this? So everything is just leads created through the different sources that you just said right now.
Yeah, but we do have our salespeople. So the reason inside sales doesn't do it is because they're just overloaded with 25,000 leads a year. But our salespeople, our business developers, they do use LinkedIn Navigator. That is one way for them to approach potential new accounts. What we also do is we have a number of account-based marketing activities running. Like, for instance, we have mapped out in the UK all the manufacturing companies that have more than 1,000 employees. We're trying to find the right contact persons there. So we do that with the help of a telemarketing agency to map that out. And once we have the inroads, once we have the contacts, we can go in with dedicated actions and try to nurture them to the point where they're ready to speak with somebody of our sales team. Good. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. If okay, I will not share the PowerPoint now because otherwise I have to change windows every time.
So what I'll do is that I will read out the questions then, if that's okay with you, huh? So what I'll do
is
you have it as well.
Yeah. I have it in front of me.
Then that's fine.
You don't.
Okay.
So who's responsible for the content? We've got a funny setup in Barco, in the sense that we are a matrix organization, and I call it funny. It's a reality in a lot of companies. Long story short, what it means is we have a number of segments. I'm heading up a segment. That means everything that has to do with market sizing, portfolio positioning, value propositioning, customer journey. That's what my team is doing. And you have a number of those teams doing that. And then we also have regional marketing teams, and they are very close to the sales teams, who are also regionally structured. And they work for all these segments. So long story short, the positioning, the strategy, the upstream part of marketing is with us. The downstream part is with the regions. So that means you're always going to have this combination of people and teams working together. So for the inbound part, and I'm going to make this relatively easy for you, for the inbound part, it's actually my team that is responsible. So we make sure that all the master contents are available, that the website is there, that the thought leadership is there, and so on. For the downstream part or for the outbound part, everything that has to do with paid, the region is in the lead, and they use the assets and the messages that we provide, and they localize, they regionalize, or they just translate as is fit for their region.
Well, maybe my colleagues can ask questions, but till that time, last time you mentioned that there was a counterpart that you had as well, right? You mentioned a lady's name. So what is her job? What does she do? So in terms of when you say that you do certain parts inbound and then the regional markets do certain things, but you talked about your colleague doing something on social or something like that. So who was that person? I forgot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. So also for social, it's so we do the inbound part of social. So the social calendar, everything on the Barco ClickShare Twitter account and so on is done by my team or somebody residing in another department actually, but functionally part of my team.
Yeah.
And then you have everything that is paid on, for instance, LinkedIn, that is then done from the regions. Okay. So the way we typically split responsibilities is if it is inbound or free, I would almost say, it comes from my team. If it is paid, then it comes from the regional team.
Okay. But do you have any coordinator who does it? Because if every region does it, you could still have kind of a derivative leads coming through other regions, right? So essentially, if people watch it, so is there somebody centrally within Barco who tries to keep track of how much we're spending on these outbound leads?
It's the regions keep track of it, but ultimately the P&L, as they say, resides with the business. So with my boss actually. Yeah. So that means beginning of the year, well, actually that's in October already, we define the sales targets for the year to come. We look at the different conversions, we look at the different, or the number of leads that would be required to be successful in the region, we look at the cost per lead. Yeah. And then also we look at historic performance, and then we say, okay, this is going to be your budget to achieve this. And if, for instance, well, a negative example here, if one region has saved on budget in order to make a certain target, then the year after I give them less budget, because the budget is here to build the business. It's not to save and give it to something else. But also, if, for instance, you use the budget for activities that did not bring the results, you could be punished. And punished is too strong a word, because we're very, very open to experiments and to new initiatives. But I mean, imagine you have 2 million budget and you spend it on 5 trade shows and you end up with 100 leads or 200 leads from those shows, then it's clear you didn't do a good job and that you selected the wrong marketing mix. And then we're going to have a lot of dialogue and discussion, and worst case, we will take away budget from you. At the same time, we can also decide, like, if there is a country or a region where we need to do a step up, where we need to make investments for the product, where we need to build awareness, it could be that you get a proportionally higher number. So that is how we deal with it. But I think the most important here is inbound is typically my team, outbound is typically the regions. And we have monthly sync meetings where we talk together, where we look at the number of leads generated, where we engage on what we are seeing, what we are observing, and I'm sure if you would ask my regional colleagues, 90% of them would say that is just a great cooperation between people trying to make the business, although there is a matrix organization behind. Your next question was, do distributors and resellers have to use the content that is created by Barco on their inbound campaigns? The answer is sort of yes and sort of no. Let me explain. Our distributors, contractually, they get 2% of MDF. So that means if they sell 100, they get 2 back as MDF funds. And of course, all MDF activities need to be submitted and approved by Barco. So that means they have to typically stick to the types of activities that we recommend or that we approve. And that also includes using, for instance, the correct logos, the correct branding, and focusing on certain products. They are not obliged to use exactly what we provide there, but it's like an implicit push that is being made there. Also, if you look at the inbound, and that was distributors. For resellers, it's a bit different in the sense that their MDF is not contractually guaranteed, it is discretionary. So that means we have MDF for them as well, but it is on a case-by-case basis. It's not contractually covered, and the same rules apply there. But in terms of them doing inbound campaigns and so on, what they typically do is they do it for their, I would almost say for their own brand or for their own company, especially the resellers. They will typically combine different pieces or different elements from the different manufacturers they are representing. But what we try to do is by the type of contents we are offering, by the thought leadership, by everything and so on, we try to drive their behavior, but it is not something that is mandatory. So we are not in a position to impose.
Leave a couple of questions on this one. So the MDF, I'm assuming, stands for Market Development Fund. The idea is that that's the fund that they have to look at it as well. So the next question that I want to ask is that, do you keep track of the fact that sometimes the MDF is discretionary, but at the end of the day, it's the channel manager who decides to do that disbursement, saying that you have met the necessary qualifications, correct? So my question to you is that, how do you keep track of the fact that the money that is spent on outbound, for example, by your regional teams, do they actually take a part of that budget and give it to resellers and distributors to do their marketing development activities? You know what I mean? That, or is it just purely?
It's two separate budgets actually. So I mean, not for publication, but our budget this year before Corona, by the way, was around 15 million globally.
Yeah.
About half of the budget was for the regional teams to do their outbound activities, and for my team to do the inbound part. Yeah. The other half is accrued as MDF and is made available to the channel. And all the regional teams have 1 or 2 people who are looking after channel marketing.
Got it.
And they are working with the MDF there. But so it is separated. So it's not that the budget that is available for outbound activities by Barco is transferred to a reseller or a distributor. That is not the case.
Good. And before we proceed, one more thing. So essentially, when you take a look at marketing return on investment, it's not so straightforward, right? Because yes, you may club them all together. So what is the return we're getting on the 15 million? But it could be that your team might be doing a fantastic, again, I don't want to say us versus them, but inbound might be doing a fantastic job, because at the end of the day, when you club them together, you always have that. But when you say, do you even internally have this kind of saying that, okay, the amount of money, so you said 15 million, so let's go with saying that everything is equally allocated. So which means that I'm looking at 1/4, around 3.75 million is the budget that you have. And 3.75 million would be to your regional teams to do the marketing, right? So essentially from that perspective.
We actually have 4 regions and my team. So let's divide it by 5. That's going to be closer to reality.
Okay, so so then we're looking at 1.5 then, eh? So if you're looking, the 7.5 by 5 would be $1.5 million. That's the euros or dollars. That's what you have. But then, so essentially, do you then take a look at it from the viewpoint of do you keep track of the leads that you uniquely generate and also take a look at the leads that are generated by the regions separately? You see what I mean? Is that something that you also keep track of, or you just put them all in one? That's it.
We put them all in one. So we sign off on lead generation objectives with the regions, and that covers both the organic and the inorganic lead gen.
Okay, got it.
The reason is, again, because I mean, sometimes paid advertising brings somebody to the website, they don't convert immediately, they come back later, and then they convert, and then it is officially an organic lead, whereas first visit was from inorganic. So we don't want to go in that kind of discussions. That's also why I say we team on this. Even though we are different teams, we have to team up, otherwise we would not make any progress.
All right.
Good. So in terms of data, you are looking at the dashboard. But so what is better for me is to open up. I'm going to change again. I'm going to open up a little slide deck. Just 1 second here. Yeah. I will share it with you afterwards as well. Stop sharing. This is because I'm just using the browser version, unfortunately.
Wait. I've always used only the browser version. You think the desktop, whatever you download is better? So maybe I should do that. I've never done that.
It is better. You have to do it. My wife is using it for her pupils.
Okay.
But so how do we follow everything? So this is our funnel, in fact. So this is the first half of this year. So if you just look at impressions, well, you know, impressions, I call that a vanity metric. It's like an estimate of how many people were exposed to what you were doing. And so that's more than 250 million a year. Then, of course, from the moment they come to our website, we do know the web visits, and then we also follow the inquiries or the leads. So that's people making themselves known and actually asking for a quote. Now, of course, you see these are pretty rough steps that we are having here. So that is why we are implementing this lead scoring mechanism, because if you download the brochure and if you click on a partner address and if you click on a configurator, you're probably ready to be converted as a lead, whereas we don't officially consider you a lead then. So that is the next step we have to take. So as you can see, it's pretty primitive what we have here. It's good insight, it's good data. We know, of course, where you come from. We know whether you came to the website via organic or whether you came via campaign initiative. So that is all very clear. But the moment you're on our website, there is, to be honest, not yet enough in place to keep on following you.
Indeed. So it's interesting, which means that the revenue that you're talking about at the bottom, 15.3, is a combination of all the marketing inbound, outbound, plus the sales efforts that is not necessarily captured here, right? So the fact is that
this is the marketing sourced funnel. So to fully explain it, so we bring in those inquiries, those leads, and from then on, I mean, we actually use the whole Sirius methodology, but I only listed MQL here not to confuse our CEO. But so MQL means it's qualified by the inside sales team. And according to the band methodology. And then you are an MQL. And from there on, we typically transfer the lead to a partner. So we lose the visibility, but instead we have this process that I explained last time, the lead to deal measurement that we are doing. So based on the data we get out of there, we know that it is typically 79% of MQLs converting into deals. So we apply that logic. So we know we have 4,000 deals with an average deal size times an average price, equaling 15 million of revenues in the first half of the year. And roughly put, it varies a bit quarter to quarter, but we typically generate about 25% of total revenues can be attributed to a marketing initiative.
Fantastic. And so which means that if I were to interpret this, then your first quarter you did 16 million approximately as ClickShare, out of which 15 was done through marketing. Again, I just, for my own clarification, this is through both organic and inorganic marketing, correct? That's
But
essential.
inbound and outbound, everything together.
Absolutely.
But sourced from Barco. So this is not the part that is sourced through the channel activities. Because
Fantastic.
they also do marketing and they also source. That is a part where we still lack visibility, to be honest, today.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's
I'm
the
saying,
other. Sorry.
yeah, I'm saying it's 25% of revenues. It could be as high as 50% of revenues, but I don't dare to claim that at this point in time. The reason is our average deal size that we use here for the calculation is like the minimum number. And that means we split, we have people buying less than 10 units, we have people buying more than 10 units. And this average is the people buying less than 10 units, but sometimes we have deals of 100 or even 500 pieces that can be attributed to a marketing sourced lead. If you start adding those to the calculations, then we end up that 50% of the business is marketing sourced. But that's not a nice message to give to our sales community. So that's why I refrain from doing so. But if I have more certainty, I will of course claim this.
Yeah, but this is fascinating because with this 15 million, at least for COVID, that's the whole marketing budget. Huh? If you said $15 million euros, then essentially what you're talking about is that in 1 quarter, by being conservative, you're justifying expenditure on marketing in this case. Huh?
Yeah, well, to be honest, the MDF is should be excluded from this one because we're not mapping here what the channel does. So actually, the budget is 7.5. So we are
sorry,
already...
you're right. Yeah. Sorry, you're right. Huh? You're
absolutely so if this works out as we planned, we would have a 30 million end of the year. So that would mean we have a return of 4 on the budget.
And wow, and this is without exact visibility of how much of them are being followed up and what is happening out there as well. Huh? Wow. Oh. Okay, but of course, for me, what is interesting is that if your distributors are actually being lazy and just copying your content, then your reach is even higher than what you put out here, right? Because at the end of the day, they're using your content. Yes, they get MDF budget and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, they are not spending any money on creating new content. And then they're getting this as well. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Good. Let me go back to the other questions you had. So what data do you have about the inbound marketing? I think we covered that one. Shall we move on to the next chapters, or absolutely. I mean, any other questions on inbound or outbound before I move on?
I'm done. But for the others, I'm sorry that I've been asking a lot of questions, but for the others, if you have any questions.
No. I've been following along, so it's been pretty good so far.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Levi.
Okay, yeah. So maybe one more thing here in my dashboard. Just 1 second here. At the moment, I'm still discovering what is in the dashboard here. I didn't build it myself. But this is pretty important. So that also means for the different teams, they can keep an overview of all the campaigns they have, and that is the column at the left actually. Of course, that doesn't tell a lot, but there is a lot here. You also see here, for instance, the leads that were forwarded to which partner. So that is something we also track. So that is all part of this. And I think if I would go to digital campaigns, you would even see more detail. Just 1 second. Yeah. So what you have here, it's pretty hard to read, but you see all the campaigns running, and then you see how many MQLs were generated from them. And so we have like 12 to 14 campaigns mentioned here, ranging from try and buy, AdWords, Ambasify is our social media platform. We also have vertical industry that is an ABM program and so on. So We're going deeper step by step. We are not yet where we have to be, but that's where we are now.
Okay. So for my colleagues, ABM, in case it's called account-based marketing. So essentially, where the moment you say it's vertical specifically, you can even have targeted content specifically to that particular industry. So that's what you have. So Levin, so a couple of things here. So essentially, I see that 2017, 18, 19, 20, which means that you can go back up to 2017 to take a look at what campaigns were run. And you can actually say, in 2017, this is what we did. So to Aditya and Vishak, I think this could be the richness of the data that we have in terms of how we have done this. I guess you can even do it by, especially you have all this, but I'm sure that the way the cockpit is run is that I can then go specifically into organic and inorganic, right? I can literally say how many, if I just put organic, then I can actually say how many of the leads have been created through the organic activities and how many of the leads have been created through the paid version, and all of this without even touching the leads that are being created by your distributors and everybody else, distributors and dealers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Good. No, great. This is great. So again, we will sign the NDA. I also want to discuss that as well, but I think we need to wrap our head around, not after this meeting, while you're on 3 weeks of vacation, to see what kind of data would be nice for us to have. Because from my head, I think there's a lot of interesting things out here. But having said that, the number crunching experts are Vishak and Aditya, so they might be looking at it differently as well. So that's pretty good.
If we have an NDA, I mean, I'm happy to export all the data to you. So that's not a problem at all.
Indeed, absolutely. So sorry, I think we can continue on with some of the other questions as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump to the inside sales part. So the band qualification, I think we covered. The other information they collect is it's banned, and they have to be sure that they have all the relevant data, like what's the address of the customer and so on. That's what they do. From then on, a lead is forwarded. It enters our CRM system, and from the CRM system, it is up to the channel manager to further distribute it.
Yeah.
And as I said, that differs from country to country. This can go to the distributor. This can go directly as well to some resellers. And the leads that are Fortune 1000 companies, as we call them, are automatically not sent to the channel manager, but to an internal business development manager who will follow up and who will nurture the lead. Do we have a deal or an agreement with distributors and resellers about what constitutes a lead? We don't.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Please.
can you just clarify the role of the channel manager and the business development manager? You talked about how their function varies with regard to the size of the deal, but can you just provide with a little bit more background on their roles?
Absolutely. So a business development manager is on our payroll, of course, and his or her job is to make sure that they focus on the Fortune 1000 accounts, and they have to build out a relationship with a number of key customers. You could also call them an account manager, but so their role is to build the business and then to handle the account. And that means they know about the needs of the customer. They frequently visit them. They give them advice. We also have like a customer council with our most important customers. That's also something that the BDM is facilitating. So it is about, and as you know, if you want to, I mean, I think Daimler is an example here. They have thousands of ClickShares. Before Daimler rolls out, there's a journey of months and months in terms of validating the product. Is the security there? Is the service there? And so on. And the business development manager does this job until the deal is ready to be signed. Then it gets fulfilled by the channel, always. So we will never, ever deliver directly to a customer. But the time it takes and the effort that goes in is something that a lot of channel partners will not do. If you have to work a year or 2 years on an account before you can land it, this is for some parties too much. That's why we have business developers. Plus, if you look at the big big accounts, they also want a direct relation with Barco. They're not happy to just have a relationship with the channel.
Mm-hmm.
The channel manager, on the other hand, as the word says, he manages a set of distributors for his country or region, and he also manages the most important resellers in the region. That means doing quarterly business review meetings, agreeing on the different sales targets, high-level building the plan, also the marketing plan, agreeing on T's and C's, handling deal registration requests, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Good. And then are the channel managers notified about the leads passed on to the distributors, resellers? Yes, because they do it themselves. So they know what they forward and to who they forward it. From then on, typically they mark it as forwarded to partner in our CRM system, and then we lose track of the lead. If it is a big one or a potentially big one, it could be that the channel managers will follow up. But as I said, normally that will be the BDM. So the big deals are typically BDM deals.
Leave quick question. So the channel managers, right? So the channel managers that you talk about, are they exclusive to ClickShare, or are they channel managers which manage the distributors, talking about all the different products of Barco? Because that could explain a lot in terms of why they might not be actively following up on the resellers with the Barco. So that's the one question that I have here. Huh?
Yeah. Both channel managers and BDMs typically manage a whole range of products, so a lot more than ClickShare.
Indeed. And
so it's actually a set of projectors, video walls, control equipment, and ClickShare. So typically they carry between 40 and 60 SKUs.
Indeed. So the reason I'm asking, and you know why, because that could also be one of the reasons why you're losing out on certain leads, because the channel follow-up might not be as strong as you might want it. Because at the end of the day, it's from two levels, right? Both from if a channel manager is not paying attention to it, what are the odds the reseller might be doing it, right? And if I'm looking at resellers also selling the 40, 50 SKUs, not all of them, right? I'm assuming that your platinum distributors might be those which sell at least 3/4 of all of your SKUs. That's why they get the platinum status. So when compared to the price of a projector that is pretty much much more bigger, for example, depending upon the kind of projector and everything else, that the focus of their efforts could be more on that rather than on ClickShare. You know what I mean? So essentially, I think from that viewpoint, if your sales channel manager is not following up actively with the reseller might always get the feeling that, hey, it's important, but not that important. Yes, it is important to Lieven, but not necessarily important to them. And is that something that you have kind of argued with, or you know what I mean? Not argued with, have a discussion with the sales manager or the sales director who takes care of the channel managers to say the KPIs of channel managers should also be on follow-up on ClickShare leads?
To be honest, I haven't had that conversation yet. I think there are other priorities to tackle, and that is, for instance, that a channel manager needs to be rewarded on for instance, the mix that he or she sells.
Yeah.
Because in most situations, there's just a sales target, and there is not a mix specified. And so, for instance, if you introduce a new product, you want more attention for that. So
Absolutely.
it would be good to push them in that direction. And I think the follow-up of leads, in a way, it is important. And on the other hand, I mean, we have an 80% closure rate from MQL to deal. So it's that there are some leftovers there. But at the same time, I don't think that is our number one priority. There are other important things like making sure that the channel understands the product inside out, making sure that the information travels. As I said, making sure we manage a portfolio of products, we drive behavior. Those are in my view, that's my personal view, more important things today.
Indeed. How many channel managers are you looking at across the world? Because this is
don't have an exact number. I would say it's going to be around 50.
50. Do you think that at some point in time, who do they report to? The channel managers? Do they report to the director of sales?
Yeah, we actually have sales senior VPs. They are called for each of the 4 regions.
Yeah.
And then you have a head of BDMs and you have a head of channel, and those 2 people report into the regional sales VP.
Indeed. That'll be interesting, because if you look at head of channels, would it be possible at some point in time for you to introduce us to them and see if we can also run a survey later on, if needed, of the channel managers to get their opinions on how they follow up with their customers on leads pertaining to ClickShare? Because for us, that will give a lot of things, because when we try to work on this paper, it could also be interesting to see whether are there differences in different channel managers stressing on following up on the leads and stuff like that. And that kind of stuff. Do you think that might be of interest? Because eventually it could definitely help Levin, but if you could introduce us to them, that might be interesting from our side as well. Huh?
Yeah, I'm not going to make any promises here.
Sure. Yes.
And the background I want to give is there are a number of frictions at the moment related to the fact that we believe in a more open channel approach, whereas our regions believe more in a closed channel approach with strong accreditation. And my take here is that this is slowing down our growth.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we are going through this stage of friction at the moment. So that's why I cannot make any promises, because it's a bit of arm wrestling at moments with the channel team. If it would be the BDM team, I think the relationship there is stronger at the moment, so that would be easier. So if you would want to talk with like some BDMs on what they do with leads and how they follow up, that might be an easier one to make it possible.
And I'm looking at now with Aditya or Vishal. Do you think that maybe looking at the performance evaluations of the distributors, right? For example, because I'm assuming that on a yearly basis or at least on a quarterly basis, that the channel managers are looking at evaluating the performance of their channel partners, correct? Because if I have to go back every year and get that, at some point in time, once we sign the NDA, would that be possible for us to try and take a look at it as a kind of a proxy for saying whether they're doing certain things? Yes, it's harder because they're also, the distributors and resellers are looking at selling a multitude of products as well. But it'll be interesting to see that, say, for example, is the performance of the distributor as given by the evaluations of the channel partners or things like that. That could also be some sort of a proxy. We do not know yet, but for me, I would imagine that could give me some sort of an indicator, assuming that the channel managers are doing the job of managing and saying, hey, yes, I'm going to look at how many SKUs you carry, but I'm also going to say, overall, how much revenue are you going to get? When the big ticket items are not necessarily selling, it could be that the ClickShare could be selling more. So you might not make revenue per product line, but if you hit overall revenue numbers, that's at least a saving grace. So which means that it could be that they could be pushing, and some channel managers might be pushing it more than the others. Huh? You see what I mean? So essentially, from that perspective, it'll be interesting to see if at a later point. But again, as I said, this is an evolving project. Maybe we'll ask certain things, and then you can say if it's possible, yes or no.
Oh, I think to add to your point, Deva, I think at this point we are getting a much better idea thanks to this conversation about the flow and kind of the entire process is being mapped out in much clearer terms, and so down the road, if we get the data from the previous year's data, 2017, 2018, or 2018, 2019, if we get that data, we can try to get a handle on the big picture by just punching the data. And once we figure out the choke points, then we can figure out how to crack open those choke points and get more data in explaining kind of we can adopt a black box approach at that point.
Yeah, sure, indeed. But I'm just setting the expectation for Levin that maybe that you opened up a Pandora's box just by answering this question, saying that. Hey, but at the end of the day, is that Levin, every question that we ask is maybe hopefully some is food for thought for you as well, saying that, okay, this is what is the reasoning that could be all the reasons why we are not necessarily getting more from this. Any of these things could be reasons, right? Your channel manager is not following up. Whether we have access to data is a different thing, but at least being aware of it is at least a lot of the battle, so that next time you're traveling, when you travel in the regions, is you can actually talk to the channel managers and see what they're specifically doing in terms of, I'm not saying you're not doing it already, but with these questions asked by you from people who are not very familiar with the inner workings, that you can actually maybe trigger some thoughts in you to actually ask these kind of questions as well. Huh?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
But so once you have a clear view on what you would like to do and who you would like to talk to, I will do everything I can to make it happen.
Absolutely.
And I normally our network is big enough in the company to make this possible, but we just got to make sure that as you say, that don't open Pandora's box.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. If I move on. Marketing follow-up with qualified leads. Who contacts the leads that have been qualified by inside sales? So that is what we just discussed with the BDMs or the channel manager forwarding to the channel. Is the information shared with the channel? Yes. They have access to everything in CRM system. And what other questions are asked? Yeah, that's something we need to find out in the interviews, because the questions a BDM asks, I have a feel for it. It's about understanding the use case, understanding the requirements of the customer, understanding the whole buyer journey that's going to be there. But that is one where I would have to bring you in touch with a BDM.
And indeed, actually, the question there was more for, remember you talked about the lead to deal ratio, the questionnaire that you ask. Actually, my question was about that. So let's say you have a lead that you're passed on, because for us, that is very, very interesting as well, because that is your one way of trying to understand the black box, right? Saying that, okay, I don't see what they're doing, but at least I should know. And you said that, right? So for example, if people answer, and that's something you can try and take a look at. If people answer with saying that, are you likely to buy within the next 2 weeks, or that questionnaire that you ask those leads, I think that, interestingly enough for us, might be because this is something that you've started doing since January this year, right? Did I understand that correct? Or
we have a platform for it since January of this year, but we do have historical data for the last 3 years there as well.
Fantastic. So, which means that that is for that part of the lead that disappears into the ether, right? Or in your CRM system. So the idea is that the lead, so who does that follow up? You see what I mean? Who does that calling the customers or the prospects to see what is happening there?
Yeah, so that is, Evelyn, she is on my team. She owns the platform, and she has a partnership with Kantar. You may know them, a research company.
Yeah.
And so the flow is an email-based flow in the first place. If we get enough responses in just via email, then that's it. If we don't have enough responses for a region, then we have a call center that gets activated. And let's say on average, we have like 10% of the leads that we are tracking in the end through this platform, and that is statistically relevant. So 10% of the total number of leads is followed up in this way.
Wow. So 10% of the leads, and how many leads are we talking about, for example, for this year? How many of the leads were followed up for, let's say, for the first half of this year?
Top of mind, we had like 1,500 leads in Q2 globally, and about double in Q1. So let's say 4,000 to 5,000 year to date.
You've done 45,000 calls?
No, 4,000 to 5,000.
Oh, 5,000. That's still 4,000 to 5,000 for us is still pretty interesting to see in terms of sample size. And from previous years, have you done some kind of an extrapolation to see whether what they have said translates into sales? That's what you said earlier, that you have some sort of a 70% of the people who say they're going to buy end up buying, or in terms of extrapolation.
Yeah, that's a tough one to double check, to be honest. It's changing now, because today the new product is is a connected one, and you need to register it.
Yeah.
So now we have access to the data to close the loop there and do that check. But to be honest, that's not going to be implemented this year because it's just starting this new product now. But the moment there's enough relevant data there, then we can use that for a sanity check.
Okay. So, okay. But the idea is that every year then you're looking at quite some number of interviews that have been asked. And do you, for example, can Evelyn provide us later on, once we sign the NDA, a copy of the questionnaire that you use, that Kantar uses to actually try and use it? So to try and see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If, indeed. And the fact in the past, so for example, there's a lead and there's a name behind the lead, there's a company behind the lead, you call them up, you get that information. Do you do something about a follow-up 6 months later to the same lead to see if they bought or not bought?
What we typically do is we follow up with the ones who did not yet buy. So if you say I bought, we don't bother you anymore.
Yeah.
If you plan to buy, then we will follow up once or twice more to check whether at that point you have already converted.
Okay, so essentially that is the case as well. And how long between the interval between these calls?
It should be in a period of 3 months that we do 3 calls maximum. So okay. There has to be a month in between. Yeah. So my current assumption is, based on the data I see, is that 50% of people buy within the month, and the other 50% convert in before the end of the 3rd month. So that is the. Based on all the data we have, it's not 100% calculated, but that's the pattern we're seeing.
Okay, and typically your response rates to these questions, when you say 4,000 to 5,000, so essentially when you call them, how many people actually take the time to answer all the questions, or the way you say 4,000?
So 10% of this 4,000 to 5,000 that I talked about.
Okay, so that means around 400 to 500, let's say for example, per quarter.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's for the first half of the year actually, but yes.
But let's say if you do, that's still 1,000 responses a year. That's not, and this is globally, right? It's not specifically in what. Have you seen some sort of a correlation that in some regions and some geographies you can actually see an actual correlation between people who answer and sales going up? I know it's a stretch. What I'm saying is that if you ask a bunch of people in India, they'll say, okay, I'm just going to please the person who's asking me this question and say, I'm going to buy, I don't want to necessarily bother. And there are 2 other Indians here, they may take offense to what I said, but the idea still is that we might want to please the people that we talk to, whereas in some countries they could be brutally honest and say, you know what I mean? To gauge whether, because a large part of what you're looking at also depends upon whether it actually follows through, right? Because otherwise it's a significant expense for you to pay Kantar to do these kind of calls, and follow up as well. So I'm curious to see whether you're making any, or if Kantar is giving you some kind of a way to see whether people who answer that end up buying. Have you talked to Kantar about how they would justify why you should pay them so much money to do it every year?
What we are seeing is the number of MQLs is a crucial one, and there's a clear relation between the MQL generation pattern and sellout of the products that we are seeing. And the thing is, we continuously monitor the lead to deal conversion to make sure that one stays stable, that one does not go down. Because that's the 2 parameters we monitor. So the number of leads and the conversion percentage. And if those 2 go up, then you see it reflected also in the business.
Yeah.
So we, for instance, have seen now, June was our strongest month in terms of lead gen. It was also the strongest month in terms of sellout already.
Yes.
It looks like July is going to be better in terms of MQL generation. So our expectation is that sellout will also be better for July than for June. So it's correlated. I'm not going to say it's 100% predictable, but you see clear links between the different numbers.
Okay. But I would really still, if I would put Kantar on the spot and say, how would you try to make sure that the people that you have, because this is typically what which is willingness to buy kind of stuff, does it actually pan out? And then because every year, if I'm going to be making 5,000 calls, and if it's 3 times in terms of that, that's pretty significant in terms of the amount of money that you spend with Kantar, in terms of that as well. So I'm just curious there. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Food for thought on this one, I guess. Righty. Other questions. The role of channel management. I think the criteria used to select channel partners and how they are classified. So that it's a bit different region to region. But basically, we have what is called authorized silver and gold channel partners. And so there are a number of commitments they have to make to move up. A revenue commitment is definitely one. Having people trained on the product is another one. Investment in demo stock is another one. Doing joint marketing activities is another one. So those are like the most important criteria we use there. To be honest, pushing the whole Barco portfolio and solution dimension is not yet a criterion today. So that's something I would like to see added there.
That's great.
Performance criteria. It's primarily, as I said, revenue related. So that is ultimately what we are talking about here. Also, when we talk about channel manager performance, it is about revenue. So that is the number one thing we are using. So we are still in a bit of a I will call that the primitive mindset, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we've been scaling the business as much as we could over the last years. So it was an acquisition mindset. So it was sale. That was the only thing that mattered. And now we are at a point where we try to start looking more and more at customer lifetime value, at securing an account for longer term. But that's a change in mindset, and I'm actually working on part of that story because I think it's a priority for us to start working that way, start thinking that way. But we are far from being there.
Leave a quick question. Do you think that if you have a good personal relationship with a channel manager, for example, that while we wait for other things, that it'll be nice if one of us or I can get a chance to talk to them about how they're looking at ClickShare, how they're, you know what I mean? That is somebody that you have a personal relationship. So it's just me talking to them to understand the dynamics of it in their markets. And if it's somebody in the US, it could be even easier because it's a good time zone. I can reach out to them. And you know how it is in the US, most of the time, the holiday time patterns are different. So we could actually reach out to them in the next couple of weeks just to understand, you know what I mean? Just to understand what is happening. And the nice thing about that is these channel managers might be talking to other channel managers. So consequently, we can get some sort of a flavor. And this is actually, I do not know whether it goes into the project. This is just for me, for my interest, but I'm sure that for my colleagues as well, it'll be interesting to also understand the dynamics that happens there between the channel managers and how does the conversations that they have with their retailers or with their distributors happen, especially with regards to ClickShare. And what I'm really curious to see is that whether things have changed right now, and in different parts of the year, you see different products going out at different times. During COVID right now, if your bulk products are not necessarily being sold as much, and then if revenue is the only target and not revenue by product line, maybe you're seeing more of a push to get revenues up by selling more of the ClickShare products because it's smaller in terms of 1750. So maybe they're realizing that if they can actually put enough effort, that you're selling more number of products through that, and maybe that could trigger a change in the attitudes of dealers and distributors moving forward as well. I mean, it's just, I'm assuming this. It'll be nice to talk to a channel partner there, not channel manager, not a partner. That's just something that where you have a personal relationship with, and that is more like a fact-finding mission.
Yeah, what I would like to propose here is we have Dave Fitzgerald. He used to be running the channel. He was the VP of channels for Americas,
Yeah.
and he's joined our team now like a year ago, and he's now focused on
Great.
the ecosystem and the alliances.
Yeah.
But he is very close still to his former team, so he has all the insights there. So that would be a safe way of doing
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah.
So if that's okay with you, I'm happy to bridge and reach out to Dave.
Indeed. And to my colleague, it's just personal interest for me, but maybe it could shed some insights into a lot of things happening in that black box as well. To see from that perspective how it could be that the channel manager could be a huge influencer in that black box and getting more visibility on the black box. And that together with the, hey, are you going to buy or not, could be pretty interesting there as well. But I'll drop this in a note separately, leave it just like last time. I'll try to put all the bullet points and say, this would be nice from that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Any other? I want to be a bit sensitive of time. I'm happy to run like 5 to 10 minutes. Don't worry. My next one is only in half an hour, but I still need a little prep there. Yeah. But any other key questions you would like to cover now in the call?
I've asked all the questions. I'm looking at Vishag or Aditya if you have something specific. No. So I think this has been pretty comprehensive. So actually the question I want to ask is what would be possible next steps? Do you want us to sign an NDA? Because we really have to wrap our head around this, because I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of discussions around, okay, what is possible, what is feasible, and that kind of stuff. Minimum, I think I would love to eventually write a sales analytics case on this minimum. The fact is that what happens there and how we want to try and do this. The wonderful thing would be that if you can get what for us is a very top-notch publication, which needless to say, nobody will understand except Aditya and Vishag maybe. I will be part of it, but I will not understand all the things they say. But translating it into a case study that I can use in my classes into sales analytics. Vishak teaches marketing analytics. So it'll be interesting from that viewpoint to actually even see this from a viewpoint of developing a case study later on with the kind of information that we have. But next steps, NDA. For me, it should not be a problem signing an NDA, but I do not know about Vishak or Aditya, but I guess.
No, it's not a problem at all. We've done it in other projects, so it's no big deal.
Really. So if you have.
So again, I guess, kind of moving forward, once we get the NDA sorted out, it'll be, like I said, the preliminary steps from our perspective is to kind of get a handle on the big picture, to see how the data kind of connects with, different parts or different levels of data just connect with each other. And once we kind of have some evidence to support the overall kind of flow of the customer journey, then we'll be able to focus on the bottlenecks and crack that open and kind of dig deeper to figure out things that are really of interest to you.
And also your wish list, and it'll be nice to have your wish list, what you would like to see, and we'll let you know if it's possible or not with the data that we have. If you can also give us your wish list, that would also be interesting for us. So I'll try to summarize this in an email and send it out to all of us as well, so that you'll get that in the next couple of days. When do you go on holidays? The holidays that you're still going week by week. So I'm assuming it's going to be early September, early August, maybe.
Yeah, normally early August, but officially I'm out from next week onwards. But I'll be doing emails once in a while. So next week is like a hybrid week. So I already made a lot of commitments there, so no worries. What I would like to get out is, what are the next steps for us in getting more and more of a in-depth and what I call real-time view of ROI, because that's my dream. Knowing it almost instantly, the leads from today are going to bring us so much revenue. And then related to that, as we try to transition towards other methods like customer lifetime value and so on, what are the steps to be taken there? What are the gaps, or what is just like the logical next step to take based on the data we have? Because on one hand, we have a lot. At the same time, I realize what we have is pretty limited. And if you would be talking to Coca-Cola now, they'd have 1,000 times more data than we have here in B2B. But
Really.
maybe that is the interesting or the intriguing angle. You're a relatively small company, a relatively small product. How do you get a grasp on your marketing ROI when you're not Coca-Cola?
Indeed. And I think from my experience of working with other B2B companies, not the thing is that, man, you're way ahead in terms of collecting data than what I am used to. So especially there are two companies where I'm working with, and you know how Vlerick was, right? We worked with a lot of companies. You guys are way ahead in terms of digital marketing and what you're doing out there for a company your size, right? But you're now 1.52 billion euros worldwide.
One
What?
billion.
It's interesting
1.
because I remember 5 years ago when the idea was to grow to 2 billion by looking at leveraging on services. Remember, that's what I remember. Right? This was 5 years ago when you said you want to go from 1 billion to 2 billion. And that, so essentially, if you're still in, probably it's also, services are much more harder to monetize and look at as well, especially from a company that has looked at giving away services free.
We did 1.2 last year, but I think we had an 18% decrease year on year in revenues, Corona,
Wow.
of course, for the first half of this year. So that means I'm not making any prediction here, but if you apply this logic, it will mean that we will be close to 1 billion this year.
Okay. So don't get me, but because I remember the idea of your previous of the CEO, maybe the current one as well, to say to grow to 2 billion, but by growing with services. You had Greet Keppens. Do you remember? I'm sure you knew Greet Keppens. That time when she was there, that was the idea, that they would grow to 2 billion. That's what they were talking about as well. Like, we had all the people there, Sjoerd de Klerk and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, this has been quite some time, of course, but but in the interest of time, to also let you go and prep, I think we will touch base here, and then we will get back to you soon. As I said, for us, we would like to get on this, but the fact is that we are also, there's no specific timeline for this, but we also want to make sure that for all of us, getting a good publication is always good. We also want to make sure that amongst the three of us here, that young man you see on who says we are, Aditya is the one who is also really the one who's pushing a lot of projects as well in terms of urgency and looking at things, and anything we can do to work together and get it out relatively in good time would be great for us as well. But I will do that, and then in the next couple of weeks, if you can just connect us to Dave Fitzgerald, I will at least gauge to see what is really happening in terms of the domain of channel managers. How do they hand over the leads? Because that is also something that is very interesting. Do they specifically take, say, I have 4 different distributors, 4 different dealers, and say that dealer has a very good network, so I'm going to pass more leads to that person? Do they do it like that, or do they just dump the leads? You see what I mean? Do they do a kind of a qualification that might help understand what is happening there as well? Do they keep track of it? How do they keep track of it? And if we can do that, we can, based on that, we can create a list of questions, and we could run an informal survey where you could say, with your channel manager, say, hey, we're just curious to see what is happening here. And the argument for the channel, to the channel director or going through the VP of sales is, Barco is looking at 1 billion when we want to be growing more. So what can we do to try and make sure that the channel partners are pushing the channel people in the right way? And it's not Levin saying it, it's actually a bunch of third-party people who are more interested in understanding how we can improve the process by which it can happen. So if that's the case, I can talk to Dave, understand the process, put up a questionnaire, and people can answer those questions, and we can see what practices work. You see what I mean? From that perspective.
That's a good idea. So if you could send the wrap up, I will in response prep the NDA and share that one with you.
Yeah.
I will set up some time with Dave so that you can already engage with him.
Yeah.
And then if you could outline your thoughts on what you would like to get out of this and how to approach this, and then we take it from there. And I'm all into. I mean, if you can build a winning case here for yourselves, I would be honored.
Absolutely, and I think that would be really, really cool, because even for us in terms of teaching, right, the analytics part is very, very interesting. I know Vishak teaches analytics in terms of marketing analytics. I'm more interested in sales analytics, which increasingly is blurring between marketing and sales. Right now, we had a talk with a professor the other day where they're still thinking of inside sales as a sales organization. But Levin, you just said that it is part of marketing. Eh? Technically, your inside sales as a qualification is looking at it from a marketing perspective. So in sales, we're still thinking in terms of if there's a term called sales in your role, it should be the sales aspect. But we are now in the practitioner space, we're seeing more and more this question saying, should inside sales, SDRs, BDRs, should they actually be reporting to the marketing organization? Because it is part of demand gen. Eh?
It is, but to me there is no sales and there is no marketing anymore.
Yeah.
But
Indeed,
it's hard to convince sales of this.
Yeah.
and Levin, I've tagged you in a post. So we have worked on another research project, which we are working on to send it to another journal. But we based on 25 interviews with sales managers and directors across different companies in the B2B space. We talk about, Vishak, I've tagged you as well. Aditya, thank you for liking it. But we talk about typically the 7 steps of selling. And we talk about what was happening in the past, pre-COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. And you will see how many of the words like inbound, outbound, and customer success, and things like sales enablement, which again is marketing content, which is then pushed over to sales, is increasingly factoring in. So essentially, I tagged you as well. So it's just a simple Excel sheet. Take a look at it, comment on it. That's fantastic.
I will. So I have forgive me the word, a shitload of documents that I have to read during the summer. So I should come back completely refreshed then.
Indeed. But this is not a load. It's just one page. That's it. It's the thinnest piece of shit you're going to read. Sorry. You can print it out and use it as toilet paper after that. There you go. See?
Excellent.
You can expect an email from me by later this evening. Huh?
Wonderful. Let's follow up from there.
Thank you very much, Levin. Really appreciate all this information.
Thanks.
Thanks for the engaged discussions. I love
Absolutely. Indeed. It was great. So we'll just discuss Aditya and Vishak. If you have a couple of minutes, we can continue with this discussion afterwards. Levin, you can listen to academic speak. Well, bye.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye. This is, by the way, I just was so proud of my friend Aditya out there. He gets coffee and tea served at his desk, man. How good is this? My God.
Have you heard of Show Off? This is the only time I've got coffee because I'm not on a call any day. Yeah. She's on a call every day. That's my duty. So I make the tea and I give it to her because I don't have calls in the morning, right? At 9. Now today I had a call.
But I was like, wow.
Good karma.
Yeah. How long have you been married, Aditya, if you don't mind me asking?
14 years.
Oh, okay. Oh, and Vishak, you? How long have you been married?
Just rounded up 20. Just rounded up 20.
So for us, this 24th is 10 years. So, but I started late. So essentially, yeah, before that, when I was in Belgium and we had this shadi.com and stuff like that, no girl wanted to say, if you're in Europe, I can't come and work. So I'm not going to say yes to you. So I said, what the hell? So yeah, my sales skills were horrible at that point in time. All the inbound leads were bad. Essentially, the content information put on that was not sufficient for lead closing. So essentially, I had to do outbound.
No, they were afraid you were the black hole.
Exactly. That's the whole point. So, no, but anyway, so.
Okay. Well, I mean, the way I see it, I think we're taking, it's like the narrative, it's unfolding very well. And if we can dive into the hood, so to speak, from the dashboard that they have, even with the available data, we can construct a story which Aditya can then analyze.
Yes, see, that's it. So we just say,
because here's how I'm looking at, right? And I don't know, I mean, I've seen this in other contexts, but it's all about, kind of when we start trying to tell a story, right? The first thing should be, okay, do we have a good title? Right? Do we have some catchwords, some catchphrases that we can hang our story on and move forward? And some of the things that has come out in the last couple of conversations really kind of jump out because of their newness, right? Of course, on their dashboard, they talk about the lead to deal, right? And that pretty much kind of communicates their philosophy towards how they handle deals. It's not just about the opportunity for sale that they're talking about. As Levin mentioned multiple times, it is the customer journey that they're kind of focusing on. And till date, customer journey has been the purview of the service researchers, right? In the context of the general marketing and sales literature, we've not really talked about customer journey mapping. Now, this is a firm which has inbound and outbound marketing. You've got at the next level, you've got inbound, outbound, and also the relationship development aspect, the BDM that they use. So they have three, at least a minimum. Of course, forget about the leads that come from the resellers, right? So you've got three broad chunks of leads that kind of are at the starting point of the customer journey process, right? Now, these are vetted and then passed on to inside sales, right? I mean, their marketing qualified leads to deal rate, the 79%, I mean, that's phenomenal. But obviously, they use the word marketing qualified lead to define a different numerator, which makes the ratio look good, right? I mean, if you use the total number of leads or the marketing acquired lead as the starting point, the ratio would come down even more, right? But again, so during the pass through to the inside sales, I mean, there is the marketing sales interface. That is a factor that we can look at, right? So you got the source of lead, the marketing sales interface, that is another aspect in the journey, right? Then comes the interface between the sales and the channel, right? The kind of what they call the regional aspect, right? Now there, of course, you've got the channel manager role, which we should hopefully get a little bit more clarity in it, right? And then we've got distributor and reseller related metrics, right? I mean, we can track how a lead progresses through all these levels to the distributor directly, or I mean to the reseller directly, or to the distributor and then the reseller, and then ultimately we can kind of cap the end metrics. Like, I mean, we do purchase rates, so on and so forth, which we can then dovetail and show which leads are more effective in passing through, right? Kind of going through the journey map, right? And again, from an interesting storytelling standpoint, if we can break down this journey into, again, borrowing Levin's words, right? The visible and the invisible part, right? So what is visible to the marketing and sales organization? What is invisible to the marketing and sales organization? And how the visible and invisible parts must kind of be in alignment to bring about the results. So from a storytelling standpoint, there are a few very interesting kind of, perspectives that we can adopt here to, again, explain what has happened based on the data that they have in the last couple of years.
Indeed. And what you're saying is, for me, is absolutely. So for me, it's interesting you talk about this, because the moment I see this, I'm only thinking, I've been so conditioned by exec ed that I'm just purely thinking in terms of how would I bring this to an executive audience to talk about this. And if you take a look at all the questions, these are all the questions that I've had in my class with the frustrations of sales managers of dealing with channel partners and everything else. So essentially, so for me, easily I can, if nothing else, minimum is like a teaching case that tries to document all of this.
Of course. And again, going back to the Sabnis paper, there, if I remember right, they looked at the black hole only in the context of why don't salespeople follow through? Indeed. Right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Aditya. So the black hole was like, okay, marketing gets 100 leads, salespeople just kind of push through. Indeed. So there's a drop off between marketing and sales. And so that's what they cracked open. But now, I mean, if we kind of come up with a bigger process model, right? Kind of to show how, like I asked you guys the other day,